Welcome to Privacy Now, your go-to podcast for privacy, crypto, and AI. Each episode, we dive into the latest advancements, explore cutting-edge innovations, and bring you insights from experts shaping the future of Web3 and AI. From crypto degenerates to the ones in it for the tech, Privacy Now has got you covered.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second episode of the Privacy Now podcast. I'm super excited to be here. And I know it took some time to release the second episode. We've had some setbacks, but now we're all here, and I'm joined by three amazing people. Matej, you already met him in the first episode. He's our co-host. I'm also joined by Harry Roberts, technical product manager for OPL and Sapphire at Oasis, and Anthony Simonet, head of research and innovation at iExec. So you already know me and Matej, so I'd like to pass the mic to our other guests so they can introduce themselves, tell us a bit about their background, how they got into Web3 privacy. So Harry, would you like to go first?
Sure, yeah. So I think around 2016 or so, I had been sort of playing around with various different things and came across Ethereum. And before then, you know, I'd looked at like various different cryptocurrencies and used them, but not had any sort of real interest in them. And I think with Ethereum, that's the point where I thought, I can program this, and people are programming this, and it's like a big playground that you can explore. And because I didn't have much exposure to finance apart from some sort of telecom billing before then, everything was new and exciting. And I think a lot of people came into it without like the baggage that comes with all the finance systems that we see. And it really seemed like programmable money, but without any barriers to entry. So since then, you know, of course, as you learn more and more, and you know your preconceptions dissolve, and you realize, this is all on the internet forever, permanently, and it's all public. This is great. So I think that's where my interest in privacy came from. Just from if I want to use this, how do I stop people from, you know, like looking at my stupid NFT purchase decisions at 3 o'clock in the morning when I'm trying to pay somebody for some work that they're doing for me, you know? So yeah, and since then I've been in the space for around a good handful of years, and very keen and aware of what the problems are and how stuff is progressing. And I'm sort of, I want to see where this plays out and where it's going to go in another 10 years or so.
Optimistic.
You probably wanted to buy the most degen NFTs, but you couldn't, right? Because everybody could see that. So.
No, I would do my due diligence, and I'd say this is trash, and then it would go up. And all the stuff I thought was amazing, and the tech is really good, and you know the programmers are amazing. It just wouldn't go anywhere. So I did have a crisis in confidence, and what am I doing? You know.
No, but you know, with the addition of everything being public, you're under even more stress. You know, if it would be private, then at least nobody else sees it.
Yeah. I don't know. I do like the fact that because everything's public, you do have a lot of innovation in like the wallets, the explorers, in visualization that. Before then, it was all behind closed doors. It was appified. Now that the data's out there, you can just spin up a node and see what can you get out of it. And that's been really interesting to see how it's unfolded.
No, but Harry, like I wasn't joking about 10 years being optimistic, not in terms of tech, but in terms like burnout. Like 10 years in Web3 is a lot. For anyone.
Yeah. It's like the before and after pictures of the presidents. Here's the first day in office, and there's me, and I've got like a 6-pack, and then there's me 10 years later, and I need a haircut. And
Great, thank you for sharing that, Harry. Anthony.
So I don't know where to start. I got a PhD in distributed systems, and that was I'm not that old, but that was long before we talked about blockchain. And so I started in distributed systems with Gilles Fedak, who's now the CEO of iExec. And after my PhD, which was more on distributed data, distributed data across hybrid distributed infrastructures. And you can see where this is going to blockchain in the end. After that, I moved to cloud computing. And very slowly, I moved from cloud computing to distributed cloud computing. And then from distributed cloud computing to decentralized cloud computing. And this is where my path crossed iExec again. And it's very interesting because what I learned when I was doing research in distributed cloud computing was that it was a thing in the research field. So there were conference papers about it. There are still many conference papers about it, but that's not something that was being adopted by the industry. And my conviction, my idea was that the reason was it couldn't really scale the way researchers were doing it, in a sense that when you want to distribute a cloud, you need to have a sort of central view, like a state that is always up to date of all of the resources of your cloud, of all of the applications that are running, of all of the services, all of the metrics, and that didn't scale. And then blockchain came and brought this sort of resolution of, we cannot have the whole state of everything, but at least we have a consensus to agree on the most important part of this state. So that's one thing. And then also trusted execution environments appeared, and iExec adopted them very quickly. And I think at that time we were approaching the middle or the end of our white paper implementation. And I realized that what we were promising, which was ownership, data ownership, data monetization, wasn't really possible if you don't have very strong privacy and confidentiality properties. What does it mean to rent or sell your data if anyone can see them? What does it mean to sell data if you retain, a copy yourself? So I didn't really plan to go in there, but I got more and more fond of not necessarily privacy or not necessarily confidentiality, but kind of all of them, and also what we call data governance. I really believe strongly that people should be able to set rules about how their data should be used, and that these rules, the enforcement of these rules, should not depend on the will of service providers. And this is also a very new idea that I think most people are not aware of. So this is where we are now. We are approaching a space in Web3 where we can actually implement promises that were not possible less than 5 years ago. And so I joined iExec in 2019. I took the lead of the research activity. We hired many people. We hired experts in distributed systems, in cryptography, and we got more expertise in T's. We've invested a lot in SGX. Now we're looking into TDX. We have planned to look into SEV. We are really waiting impatiently for ARM manufacturers to really implement that ARM CCA specification so that we have more T's and we can combine them, and we're looking into combining them with the cryptographic approach, MPC, FHE. So yeah, I'm very excited about all this, and I have more ideas than I have time to implement them. So it's really cool to talk about it because it allows me to take a breath and dream a little bit. So yeah, very happy to be here.
Nice, happy to have you here, Anthony. And it's good because we invited Harry to this conversation. Harry is the same, like he's always trying out things and has a lot of ideas and innovations in mind. So, One thing.
Usually
Sorry.
we're gonna sit back and let the minds thought, right?
Probably. I already feel overwhelmed here. So. No, but it's a very interesting field, and I think more and more people are becoming aware of it in our industry. How it ties to all the fields, including AI now, because you need privacy for AI. And while we're on the AI topic, make sure you watch the first episode where we had Trent McConaughey from Ocean as a guest. Incredible individual. We learned a lot from him, and we keep learning. But yeah, so I actually wanted to start with privacy as a concept and actually the erosion of privacy in our current day and age, because I think to fully appreciate the potential of blockchain for enhancing privacy, I think it's essential to understand the context of privacy in our age. And I think over the past few decades, this has basically the proliferation of internet has fundamentally altered, I would say, how personal information is collected and used, because we see all these corporations and governments that have access to individual data, basically leading to a centralization of power, and therefore to a very significant erosion of personal privacy. And we have countless, I think people have become numb to this erosion of privacy, because this year alone, like we had, I think I have some notes here, Trello had a breach, 22 gigs of user data leaked online. AT&T, a major data breach that impacted nearly all its customers. Healthcare sector, multiple breaches occurred. And I think the list can go on forever. I haven't even researched everything, but I don't know. I guess regular users stopped caring some time ago. And I think it's up to us, people that are in the industry, both in Web 2 and Web 3, to educate people and explain why privacy is important and why their data is important and why data is the new oil in this day and age.
I think if I can add a little bit, so I think users completely became desensitized with all the hacks. Basically, they're putting their data in every service they come to, right? So even if you're subscribing to something, you give them, your age, your address, so they can put you in their little group of geolocation, age, whatever, right? And target you then with very specific stuff. And I think it's funny where people care about, privacy, towards, let's say, your neighbor, right? So my neighbor is not supposed to know all about me, right? But these companies I trust with everything, right? So I think there's a false, let's say, this comfort where they think, just because the big conglomerates hold their data, it's safe, but it's being resold to everybody, And I think, how, if we're looking at blockchain, bringing back the transparency, I think, we're now in the other extreme where everything's transparent. And again, we have companies exploiting that, right, against you. So I think it would be good to have a discussion here and to hear from Anthony and Carrie what they think about, how to balance this, privacy erosion from the corporates, and then, also bringing back to crypto, where we're all about verifiability and accountability, transparency, but at the same time, not showing everything to the to everyone what we do, right? Maybe Carrie, you can start.
Yeah, sure. I was just thinking about the 30-year time span of the introduction of the internet and and how we've ended up with what we have at the moment. And like you've got the practical stuff that happens, the compromises that people make, where you can't have you can't have private computation. You rely on some trusted party to do that. But before that, before we had software as a service and platforms as a service, it was ignorance, basically. Because we couldn't see that the data was going unencrypted over the wires, we all thought that it was fine. There's a limited number of people that knew how to run Wireshark or TCP dump on a server, and you can see all of the local LANs data, right? And before SSL, when nothing was encrypted, that's okay because we trust the geeks to not exploit us and exploit our data. And I think that feeling still goes through today, where because we can't see it, because it's not tangible, because Facebook is a big, happy, friendly company that has lots of geeks and they've got lots of security and like CISOs and stuff behind this to make sure that your data doesn't leak, that we sort of trust this. And more and more we're going into like from a high trust environment. So if you think of high trust societies to the internet, where everyone's online, everyone can tap into everything, there is no real way to get data back in the box once it's leaked. And I think you talked about data being oil, but I think of it as being nuclear waste. It's slowly covering everything with this like toxic dust, and it's collecting. And years in the future, we someone's going to get fined like $1 billion for collecting data that they didn't realize they were collecting. And so I think like with blockchain especially, it is the sovereignty, it is the intersection of networking, cryptography, of privacy, of money, of all of these things right at the nexus of it. And it is a low trust. It's a solution to a low trust internet. We don't have usernames. We don't have passwords. You can't really rely on emails anymore. You don't rely on centralized third parties. And it's all about like your individual consent, custody, and your protecting your keys and your data is really up to you. So we are compromising now with that in blockchain, where we've got like login to Web3 via your email. And of course, Google sees all of the Web3 logins, and we're relying on the geeks at Google to not click on the links before you've clicked on them. But if we were to redesign all of this stuff with a super low trust, zero trust sort of perspective, then I think that's where confidential trust execution comes into it, where if we can't trust the cloud providers, how can we make sure that the geeks can't, peer behind the scenes and see what's going on? How do we remove that level of trust?
Yeah, I mean, maybe Anthony, if you can touch on something. So you mentioned here, right? In crypto, you don't have emails, all that, but now you have certain applications where to simplify access, you can have email, to log in and stuff like that, right? So in this pursuit of UX enhancement, because I think a lot of people talk about UX is terrible in crypto, nobody understands it. That's why we have problems with adoption, right? Are people then forgetting the basic values of crypto while trying to pursue these UX enhancements, where they're trying to copy certain Web2 stuff that people are used to onto Web3 and introducing a bunch of intermediaries again back to this space, right? And how can technologies like we're working on and iExec is working on help with that, right? So to not lose the spirit of crypto with self-sovereignty and decentralization.
Yeah, I think kind of forgetting how it all began, in the 90s, or I think I got the internet at home in the early 2000s. And at the time, you used to install programs on your computer, and you used to process your data on your computer. And there wasn't all of these data economies, so you would send some data online, but not that much. And then software as a service appeared, and everyone gradually found it natural to just do everything online, not install programs anymore, and do everything in the browser. And I think that was I'm being very naive, but I think it was for good reasons. There are some good reasons for sending everything in the cloud. You don't have to have such a powerful computer. It brings economies of scale. It brings availability. You don't have to back up your files at home anymore. In case if your house just like burns in a fire, you will practically not lose anything. So that was good. And now we realize that maybe we've put all of our eggs in the same basket, and there's this data economy that's happening behind our back. And do we need to sort of roll back? And I think no, we should probably not roll back, because so you are talking about UX and let's call it maybe accessibility. Installing programs on your computer was just too difficult for everyone. SaaS, software as a service, is very simple, maybe too simple. And I think that blockchain is kind of the missing link between the two. Blockchain and confidential computing is probably the way to keep services, I don't want to say in the cloud because that's very Web 2, but on the internet, remotely, without compromising my security and my privacy. But if you want blockchain to be this missing link, yes, we have to work on accessibility. So that means blockchain, in my opinion, right now is a very low level medium. It's something that people should probably not see or care about, just the way you don't care about the kernel on your computer. And yes, iExec is working very hard to bring tools, developer tools, to just hide the complexity of smart contracts or dealing with T's, remote attestation, sealing, and just make applications easier to develop, so that in the future, very soon, hopefully, people will interact with applications that look software as a service, but are not. Applications that give as much control as if the data was stored on the user's computer, but even more, because when something is installed on your computer, then you are responsible with the keys, and you have to be responsible with the security of your computer. So yeah, I think the blockchain is the missing link. I think it's undeniable that UX is the most pressing challenge, and I do believe that confidential computing will help, but only if we bring high-level tools. And no API right now is simple enough for developers to adopt it. That's my opinion. Just the concepts are just so complicated. Explaining
that's a really good point with like developers. If you present them with two different options, one is do things the way they are, put the password in the database, the user enters the password in. That's simple. It's very easy to think about. Versus, and we have to get the enclave to generate a key pair, and then we test the validity of the enclave to the attestation service, and then we put that on the blockchain, and you have to pay gas to verify the attestation, and then you so on and so forth. And until there is like until it's the default option, people are always going to choose the easier option. So with making the as accessible as possible to developers, that's a huge challenge.
Also, I think we would be wrong if we expected users to request this level of privacy. Most people don't care because, like we said, they are becoming numbed to these leaks. So if you wait for people to ask for it, it's going to take too long. It's the developer's job to make applications that are beautiful, powerful, full features that can actually compete with Web 2 applications so that users adopt them. And this is hard because developments are complicated, they're expensive, and the demand is, I don't know. We understand that the interest is there. Like if you pick someone on the street and you ask them, hey, is it okay if I just like take your data and sell it behind your back? They will say no. But then what do they do on their computer? So...
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, one mistake that I've made in the past is thinking, oh my God, this product is beautiful. People are just going to take it and use it. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, people, we're lazy by nature, right? So we're going to always go with the easiest option let's say, as this is like tooling for us, right? So it's not your purpose to try to do this or that. You're doing something else. This helps you do that, right? So using DeFi helps you make, trade and make money, but the login, how data is processed, all of that, it's like a secondary thing. So you want to pass that as soon as possible to get to the thing that you want to do, right? So I think that's what I'm saying. We're lazy in the sense that, sorry?
Right. You cannot wait for a transaction to mine.
Yeah. It's almost too long, right? But you point out a good thing here. It's like, you have passwords in the database, or, this complicated process to have this remote attestation of this and that, right? So if you look at, how regulators are coming into this space as well, right? And people, even before regulation really comes, are trying to anticipate, is this going to be a problem with, GDPR in Europe or, something else? Do you think more regulation can actually help us improve, push developers into the path of, trying to relinquish, the responsibility? Do you think more strict regulation will help with that, or will just destroy any innovation in this space?
I think it's a double-edged sword. It's like without this, the threat of punishment of not doing what we as a society agree as being like the baseline level of stuff. Like if the EU said, don't store passwords, we've kind of done that by proxy already with the GDPR, but we've just said that you can store passwords, but when it inevitably gets leaked, we may or may not fine you. And it's the sort of threat of all this, but it's very complex to regulate that. And you've got like whole industries of GDPR consultants now who now make more money than the EU has issued in fines to any of the companies for, breaching the GDPR. And it, I don't know, it seems like one of these things of like, can we get to a position where the fines are so high that you have to make really, very careful decisions about not storing user data? And I'm talking about, can we say that, okay, so if you knowingly store user data in a way that could get leaked, then your company's liquidated, that it goes out of business, it's death for the company, like a corporate death penalty, right? And that's like taking it to an absolute extreme. But what level of regulation would have the impact that you want to make a sufficient enough change to the way that people develop these apps for people? And I'm not. Maybe that's a question for iExec. Is there any motivation that like carrot or stick that's going to have an impact, right?
I think so. There are two sides to that regulation coin. One very positive side of these regulations is that at least they educate the people. They bring people to talk about it. They bring people to understand what is legal and what is not. It may sound, again, a little naive, but a lot of people don't really understand what goes behind their screens. So they might not realize that when the leak happened, sometimes it was not just fatalities. That's not just how things goes. Like something could have been done different, and these companies are responsible because they didn't do the right thing. So I mean, in that sense, privacy regulations are interesting. I think there also maybe present an opportunity for us in Web3 because some of them are really hard or complicated to implement. So those are not the opportunity. I'm thinking, for example, about the right to be forgotten. On blockchain, that's pretty tough to implement, the right to be forgotten. Like, how do I erase my records from the Bitcoin blockchain? I don't
you can't really.
I don't think like anyone is thinking about it, but okay, let's forget about it. Now the opportunity is when we have regulations like GDPR, for example, which brings requirements about transparency. Transparency is a property that blockchain and confidential computing can actually contribute to. So if we have strong transparency regulations, if some business verticals have to implement transparency, at some point they will come to blockchain companies. And this has happened to us a couple of times. So, it's all about, okay, let's be patient. I think regulators and lawyers really enjoy developing very strong rules about a lot of things that might not be always possible. But this is probably, just for on the whole grand scheme of things, it's not that bad. And after a few months or years, what remains is what can actually be implemented and what makes sense for the people. And that, yes, personally, I think that some of these regulations, the one that will stay, will actually benefit us.
Just like cookie banners have benefited us.
I mean, the regulations against cookies, they have proven us that, okay, it's super annoying, but they have proven us that, yes, it is possible to at least show people what cookies do. And there has been some work for, eliminating cookies, proposing alternatives that would not have even been considered without the regulations.
You know what I see a problem with regulations? They're always, 2 steps behind the Fed, right? So even if you look when GDPR came in, was after, the big companies already, got all of your data, and then they're trying to retroactively kind of correct the situation, right? And now, because they were working on it for so long, and it's just perfect, right? We need to stick to it, even though the technology, on the blockchain side, let's say, right, crypto, evolved in a completely different sphere, right? So we mentioned, the right to forget. I had quite a few interesting conversations with people that are very in the GDPR, compliant stuff. Are we in a gray area if we say that, the data is still on blockchain, but nobody can access it, right? Does that mean that you are forgotten or not? If nobody has access to it, is this the same as being deleted or not, right? So, one would read that as yes, the other one would say no, it needs to be permanently deleted, so somehow somebody could regain that access, even if you can verify that it has gone, right? So I'd say regulation is probably, how's the saying called, right? The path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Paved with intentions,
yeah. So every regulation, comes with, good intention, I would say, right? But, we can very quickly come into this situation where, this small bit and this small bit and this small bit, and yeah, we're in hell, right? Because you're trying to please all of these different, frameworks, and then you're in the end, stuck, or your hands are tied. I don't know. Maybe this is the wrong take or a controversial take.
I look at it as being like catch-22 situations where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And there's no, it's like, okay, so if you have perfect privacy, then you're not compliant with anything. And if you don't have perfect privacy, then all your data is going to get leaked and you're going to get fined. And it seems like that there is like a technological idealism where as developers and as engineers and architects, we can design systems that are perfectly private, that have, it takes, you have to take a stand to implement these, to enforce, some basic principles. But if you follow this, we've known about these principles for a long time. And the problem is the need to compromise, where we end up with this position in the middle where it's kind of private and it's kind of public, and none of it's really ideal. And you have these long battles over, can we like retroactively make it unprivate? And that I've talked to lawyers about this, and it's it's a difficult concept, right?
No, but I agree with Motte that governments and regulators are always 2 steps behind. Like something huge and bad needs to happen for them to take action. I'll give you a simple yet horrible example that happened in Romania. So most of the countries in Europe had banned smoking indoors. for our country to do that, there needed to be a huge fire at the club in Bucharest, and a lot of people died. Then they realized that they need to ban smoking indoors. And I think there's a documentary on Netflix if you guys want to watch it. Like,
what about
it was horrible.
And the credit rating agencies
Yeah.
who collect data on everybody in the world, and yeah. So I know maybe it'd be good to discuss, like, okay, technology. What is, like, we've got trust execution, we've got TDX, we've got SGX, we've got programs like Morello's program, which is really interesting about how do we add additional levels of separation between programs to enforce, like, hard boundaries for data, like what can one program see, what can another program see, and if we have to make this as easy as possible, do we say that, like, the best solution is in 5 years' time, the cloud is fully trust execution environment. In 15 years' time, everything is running on these ultra fast, MPZ, FHE, MPC, ZK ASICs that are all running in clusters across, like, quantum links or something. Maybe another 5 years is needed for that. But if we're creating a development environment that by default you deploy your apps, you kind of program it as normal. It runs locally on your computer, or it runs essentially in a private computer on the cloud. I think that's pretty close to replicating the sort of development experience. It's just we've got 15 years of really hard effort to wait for the technology, wait for it to be fast enough, wait for it to be deployed widely enough, wait for the rest of the processor developers to add the intrinsics that will make it feasible, and then wait maybe another 10 years after that for all of the development frameworks to catch up, to have Merkleized databases by default with anonymous queries over them or something like that. Anthony, what are your thoughts about that?
What I hear is, I think you're saying that basically tech is ready, right? Tech is ready and it needs to be adopted. And my take would be, in this case, regulations can actually help adopt these technologies if they make service providers do it. Service providers don't implement technology that are expensive, and conventional computing is expensive. FHE is expensive. ZK proofs are expensive because they're slower. They require more engineering. So, yeah, I think I'm sorry if maybe I misunderstood your question. You're saying, sorry. Maybe can you rephrase your question? I'm sorry, I got confused.
Oh no, I'm ad-libbing. I've got Minnie and Matej on the call, who I love talking to, because I can just go on forever. But maybe if we look at a scenario, just a hypothetical scenario. What if the EU came out next week and said blockchain is illegal because it cannot possibly be GDPR compliant? And if we had, sorry.
That's a very good question. Like, what would happen if in 2 weeks the EU said that blockchain is illegal because of some GDPR regulations? I think that would fall back in what I talked before, which is some regulations cannot just be enforced, and so the regulation itself will be forgotten. And that reminds me of a conversation we had, Minia, when we prepared the podcast. I told you about these regulations that we have in France about which cryptographic tools are legal or not. And so I did some research. And it turns out that in France, for example, you can do cryptography freely if you use it for authenticating messages, and if you do it for ensuring the authenticity of messages. If you use cryptography to actually encrypt data and make it unreadable, then there are regulations. You cannot do what you want, whatever you want. There are laws about the size of keys that you're allowed to use. There are different laws And whether you are using the software for yourself, whether you're selling it, whether you're exporting it. And so basically, does that mean that if I build a very strong T system that is literally unpenetrable by anyone, is it illegal? Because it doesn't sound right? But if you look at the charges against Pavel Durov, for example, so there was all of the complicity to illegal activities. Okay. There were things related to Telegram not moderating some features properly. Okay. Yeah. There was one chart that people didn't talk about that much. And I took note. Where is it? Blah, 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 blah. How did I lose it? Oh, yeah. Importation of a cryptology means that does not exclusively ensure authentication or integrity control functions without prior declaration. So Telegram is charged of providing a mean software to encrypt data for things that are not just limited to integrity and authentication.
But that would apply to any messaging, like WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted. Even Facebook Messenger is end-to-end encrypted. Like
I don't know. I don't know, but that theoretical what if blockchain was illegal in 2 weeks thing, it's kind of already there. Everyone is just like looking away, and
I see this as a challenge. I'm okay. So how can I rephrase this as being authentication and verifiability? And if we look back at the Web3 space, and you've got all these service providers that are running the RPC nodes, and you've got the dApps that you load in your browser that connect to the RPC node, and we have no idea if the results that they're giving back to us are correct or not, right? And one of the ways that we can have like end-to-end verifiability is it's necessary to be encrypted. It's necessary to have like a trusted enclave that that the software is running inside it is verifiable, and all of the communication coming inside and out of it cannot possibly have been tampered with by anything that's not running inside the enclave. And encryption is necessary for verifiability and for authentication. And essentially, if you say that I have to authenticate every single message, and the only possible way that I can authenticate this and have verifiability is to have strong encryption, then that seems like you've got the intent and the letter of the law versus the practicalities of how do we achieve this. They're fundamentally opposed to each other, and I don't particularly want to be the first person to have to spend $1 million in court to argue this, right?
Exactly. That's why we're all looking.
No, but I think this is very dangerous. Like if these accusations go through, it sets a precedent. And
but you know what bothers me the most is the whole world, at least the Western world, was always looking up to the United States to kind of set the path for innovation, all of that. Right, a lot is coming from the States. And then they had also in the legal system, that had that saying, better to let 9 guilty people go than lock one innocent person, lock one up. And then with data is vice versa, right? Better to leak the data of millions to maybe potentially catch one bad guy with it, right? So to have mass surveillance to potentially get somebody. And I think all of these regulation kind of follows that rule, right? It's like, we need all this access, because there is potentially somebody doing something that could be illegal, right? So there are so many ifs in here that we went from a completely, into the opposite pole in terms of when it comes to presumptions, right? And I hope here the tech, that is being built in crypto and Web3 can bring back, that initial notion of, this should be the normal. And if you need to catch somebody, you need to do it, through other means, not by, breaching, personal privacy of everyone else just to catch that one person, right? So maybe, I would love to hear your thoughts as well on this.
So something that came to mind with Telegram specifically was because everyone had the perception that it was encrypted because it did have encryption for peer-to-peer messages if you enabled it, that a load of stuff happened in public that was very, very had a lot of attention from a lot of the authorities. And the fact that now this is coming to light where they've said, we didn't have encryption on this because, all the techies knew behind the scenes that, this isn't encrypted, that now the public knows that, your stuff's going to be reported, that people are going to work around this in a way that before they're cutting off the intelligence. If you don't have observability anymore because you've made it aware that we could observe it, that people are just going to move to Signal or WhatsApp or to enable private chats or something like that. And I don't know, it's like this sort of double-edged sword of the more that, there's 2 points I want to talk about. One is from the government side or from the intelligence side, which is if we can just make it as easy as possible to not use encrypted stuff, then that's the best position for monitoring. And for most people, it doesn't really matter. And then the other side is the more you make it difficult to have encryption, the more people essentially. You have the crypto anarchy scene, the cypherpunks essentially saying, well, we're going to find a way of opening Pandora's box. It's like when you have this sort of easy, happy median where, like Gmail has all of your emails in plain text, and that's okay because it's the US government. But as soon as people realize that they're scraping all your emails, then all this cypherpunk stuff is going to come out and maybe it's going to hit critical mass. Maybe someone's going to develop a new email client. It's like, I'm not sure what it's going to take for society to shift in one way or the other, but maybe with like trust execution, combined with ZK, MPC, FHE, all of these new stuff that's coming out that is becoming feasible, that we've all been working on for the past 10, 15, 20, 30 years going back, that maybe it's coming to the point where it's going to... I'm not sure. Is there a metric, Anthony, of like what's the usability metric where it becomes the default because it's easy enough versus it requires it doesn't require users to go out of their way to choose one direction or the other?
That's a tough question. I don't know. I think, so on the usability, I think the job is being done, and I'm very optimistic. I'm sure that in no more than 2 to 5 years, it will not be more painful to just use a Web3 application than just logging into your bank account, and everyone is used to it. I don't think anyone complains about the cryptography of banking websites, but I think what's more important is how do we educate the people. Our friends, our family members, everyone non-technical around us, every possible community about what is technically achievable right now. People should know that it would be perfectly possible to, for example, signing up to a newsletter without having the service knowing your email address. This is technically possible now. If more people knew about it, maybe people would not sign into newsletter that just stare at their email address in a MySQL database. If people knew that they can specify rules about how their pictures can be used, be it traditional image analysis or AI image modifications. If they knew that you can do all of this in a set rule, that it would be technically impossible for the service in the backend to do anything more than you allowed. If they knew that once you have revoked your consent, it is technically impossible to do anything with your data, then they would ask the services to use it. But they don't, because they don't know. I don't want to say we're lying to them or people are lying to them, because I think most people just don't realize yet. But again, we don't talk about it enough.
Anthony, do you think the Web2 companies will actually, be happy with, that type of access? Because currently they're profiting from all the data they're picking up, right?
Yeah.
So
I think what the people want and what the providers want is very different, and there's obviously one party here that has more power than the other. This is a contradiction. I don't have the answer. The contradiction is, as a service provider, it's more expensive to me to implement strong privacy, because server costs, engineering costs. Things like resilience, disaster recovery, like how do I recover from a database crashing inside of a T compared to a regular database? That's one thing. And the added cost is, oh, wait, you're saying that if I do this, also I cannot exploit the data the way I want. I cannot monetize it. I cannot go to a data broker and sell it. So, of course, I don't want it. I'm trying not to be too paranoid here, but I'm pretty sure that
this is the podcast to be paranoid.
It's kind of is privacy washing a thing? Pretending.
Privacy washing is absolutely a thing. Loads of people, they have the statements on the website. We care about your privacy. Click accept. And you have this just blanket term where it's like the sort of patriarchal thing of, don't worry, we're in good hands, we care about you.
That reminds me, I went to I don't remember what it was, but anyway, I should probably not say it anyway. It was a European conference on data. Not data privacy, but data something. And there was like an exhibition hall, and there were so many companies who would present all of these different ways to ask for consent. They all had dashboards with different toggles, and I was like, but what happens if I refuse or I revoke? And it was just the same, right? You're just, it's like a pinky promise or wishful thinking. So more time is picking up like how they will display privacy instead of implementing it.
Yeah. I had an idea yesterday, which was the whole like rent versus own. If I buy some software, do I own it, or am I licensing it? Is it in perpetuity, or is it a limited license? If the service goes down, do I have a right to recover this? And I think that where regulation would be good is not letting people say the word buy unless it means buying it in the way that we understand, right? So if the shops then have to say you're allowed to borrow this music CD, and that fundamentally changes the way that we as consumers interact with the people who are selling stuff. It requires some kind of honesty or straightforwardness, and of course my instant solution is let's make another cookie banner, but it's like, are we going to have your data? We can see your data, just like a big warning saying we can see all your data, and people are going to still click through it, and then in 15 years time nothing will have fundamentally changed, but we'll all be clicking this 10-15 times a day.
It's how you wrap it. That's important to people, because as Anthony said, like if you go to someone and ask them like, can I have your data and sell it to a third party, and you get nothing, of course they're gonna say no. But if you send them a video of a cat, if you want to watch this video, give us your data, they're gonna give you your data. Like
click the step here, and then they're gonna give it.
Yeah. it really is like that.
This reminds me of something else. I realized a few years ago, again, like in the early 2000s, oh my God, I'm old. We had to educate people at the beginning of the internet that when they send a file by email, they don't actually send the file, they copy it. And we had all of these jokes like, oh, I'm sorry, I sent you this PDF by mistake. Can you send it back to me? Once you send it, you actually made a copy, and what happens is out of your control, right? And it sucks because now we kind of have to re-educate people the other way around. We have to tell people, do you know you don't have to copy files? Maybe you can send a file and lose its property. Like you can actually transfer the data and the property of the data so that you lose control on the data when you send it. Or you can send data and unlock access to it remotely, and no middleman can make that decision instead of you. So I think changing this perception of how data ownership works is going to take long, because it took a few decades to actually educate people on, how email works. And now we have to say, okay, you know what, we were not wrong, but technology has progressed, and now forget about this. You can do better.
No, that's a perfect example.
You're absolutely right, and I think it's, as I said, like it's up to us to educate people, and projects like Oasis and iExec, like we're well positioned because, like even for regulations, like allowing users to prove the validity of a transaction without revealing any other information, like it's important. And this, by the way, we're coming up to the 1 hour mark. We don't want to bore people. Like I'm sure we can go on for hours, but for the last segment, I wanted to touch upon the ECC, and when we launched this podcast, we actually decided that we would try to explain complex concepts to the audience that is not aware. And Harry, I would need your help with this because you're great at breaking down complex concepts. And before we talk about the ECC and the Alliance, which we're all a part of, maybe you can touch upon the different privacy preserving technologies, like what is a TE, what's FHE, and what's decentralized confidential compute, first of all. just like in simple terms. I know it's hard, but
that's a really difficult question.
Maybe Anthony wants to take a stab.
Or maybe Anthony, yeah.
Okay, I'm used to it. Not in 2 minutes, but kind of. Okay. The way I explain it is when you think of privacy enhancing technologies, we usually have 2 tracks. One track is the one that everyone knows, and it's cryptography of software-based approach. So it's, encrypting protocols, everything that runs on software. And the other track is hardware-based solutions, like trusted execution environments. Software track is very powerful, very strong, but a bit slow yet. I think I can say that without upsetting anyone. The hardware track is super fast, or orders of magnitude faster, and it makes it easier to port legacy applications that already exist, but they can suffer from such an attacks or backdoors. These hardware-based solutions, they are features in CPUs, processors that can isolate workloads and data and code entirely from the owner of the server, from the operating system, from the cloud provider, from anyone in the network. So this is what allows you to send your data to the cloud without having anyone, not even the service provider, examine your data. That's it. And so there are 2 different tracks. Everyone is putting bets, So at iExec, we obviously put our bet on the T side of things. I don't want to get too ahead in the conversation, but my personal opinion is that, and I think I'm not the only one, no solution, either software cryptography based or hardware based, solve the problems entirely. And we need to combine these. And this is why since 1 or 2 years, we've seen things like hybrid PET. I don't know if you've seen stuff like that. And so it's all about combining 2 or more of these.
I definitely agree with the layered approach, where if you have some kind of MPC protocol running in a trusted execution environment, you get essentially the best of both worlds, right? So we're looking at situations where can I get the benefits of both this tech and that tech? How can I layer them so they strengthen each other? And especially, with ZK proofs, running the provers inside trust execution, running the verifiers in trust execution, this is not necessarily just about confidentiality, although confidentiality has a big part in this of, how do we protect our infrastructure from the node providers, from, any malicious influence, but also how can we verify that it is doing what we think it's supposed to be doing, rather than relying only on one, maybe, I've seen a lot of problems with ZK stuff where people have missed one tiny little linchpin, and that has, screwed everything basically. But if you run that inside a trust execution environment, then nobody would be able to run the exploit anyway. But then again, questions of trust and centralization, and it is a huge, awkward and set of trade-offs, and we're just running the optimization process at the moment collaboratively to find where's the sweet spot, and I think it's a good interest.
But what about FHE? Like, why is it so expensive to run?
Is re-encryption. The schemes like the Paleo crypto system, where you can run a set of computations, but the problem is that the number gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, because you're storing an amount of information in there that's not just like the current computation, but the entire history of all of the computations that have led up to that. So one of the problems with fully homomorphic encryption is that you have to re-encrypt things so that you can make it feasible to reduce the size of the information that we're computing over. Otherwise, you end up with 400 terabytes of data that you're sending across as the proof of computation. So, and doing the re-encryption, of course, it's novel, fun, exciting math, but it is much more expensive than a lot of the other math that we do with.
Okay, now I understand. I was always curious, like, why does everyone say this, that FHE is super expensive to run, and it doesn't make sense at times, like you can use other solutions. So did we lose Anthony? No,
we got Anthony back. Yeah, I look at it from the perspective of imagine if every single transistor on your computer was running crypto computations at the same time, and then you end up with with ZK and RISC-0, for example, we're not even as fast as a Game Boy in terms of the level of computation that we can do on the fastest, most expensive Amazon computers that we have at the moment. And FHE is another 5x on top of that because of what's involved.
But the future is a hybrid solution for sure, right? And what about the CCLNs? Like, what do we think about that? I wanted to just touch upon it. Anthony, maybe you can take this one. The CCLNs.
So I call it, maybe I'm wrong, I call it the DCC Alliance. I think you're saying the DEC. I don't know. Anyway, I think it's a great initiative to kind of build a narrative about decentralized cloud computing. There was a need for projects in the Web3 space that were working in different areas. And the very important thing is also leveraging very different technologies to kind of get under a common umbrella, to share objectives, to share work, to share a narrative. And so we talked about FHE, ZK proofs, MPC, Ts. There are also different flavors of Ts. It's important that because all of these technologies and the projects building on different technologies go in the same direction, that they collaborate, that, like I said, especially they communicate and educate together. In the end, it doesn't really matter to me if, ZK proofs or FHE or T wins. I think we all win if we have brought these technologies, we have packaged them in a way that is beautiful and easy to use, so that bring it to the people so that they become mainstream. And so that's what the DCC Alliance is all about.
Yeah, we need to increase increase the numbers of people that use this technology. And I think through common efforts, we
either that or just make everything else illegal.
Or that, yeah.
Lobbying, I don't know.
No, but I think this is a lesson that we need to take away from this episode, that we need to educate people, and alliances and initiatives like this are more than helpful. And I'm happy to say, I just wanted to give a shout out to the guys from Web3 Privacy. They're doing an amazing job educating communities as well. So we need more and more initiatives like this, I believe, for this technology to be adopted, for regulators to properly understand the technology and implement regulations, because in the end, I think it's inevitable.
Yeah.
I don't know. Should we wrap up? We're over the 1 hour mark.
I think this is the perfect point to
yeah.
Stop now.
Any closing thoughts from you guys?
From my side, I would just say I really hope that tech will run faster, than the regulators, and they will try to adopt to us, not vice versa, right? So try to innovate more than trying to be compliant more, when it comes to this. So that would be my wish for the sector, especially because privacy is such a sensitive topic, and it's not just privacy of personal data, but confidential compute and all that. As Anthony said, what things that are illegal in France, for instance, right? I think here, hopefully, we can run faster with the tech and bring it to a certain level and a certain adoption that it's hard to put back into some frameworks that are, let's say, less favorable to the people.
From my perspective, I think, there's lots and lots of different competing standards. It's very difficult to target all of the different frameworks, and just from a developer's perspective, that is one of the main problems I see. It's just so much variety, and everyone's trying to construct their modes. And if we can figure out something a lot less complex, I'm thinking of the Pip-Boy from Fallout. If we have a DeFi Pip-Boy or something that runs on a fully decentralized, trusted, confidential compute platform, that would be really cool, and then anyone can implement it. But and then maybe users will be able to use the stuff as well. So I just hope it's going to come together, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that has been said today, and I just wanted to add about regulations. Regulators usually work on the pressure of citizens. So one way to shift regulations the way that we need is really, really to educate people. And maybe I haven't talked about enough educating developers, but we need to educate people so that they are more demanding, and we need to educate developers so that they understand how to satisfy these new needs. And then I really strongly believe that within maybe 1 decade, regulations will follow. They will become more reasonable and more relevant, I would say. So I think maybe we can meet again in 10 years, I don't know, and see.
Just one rebuttal, I would say not every framework is people demand it, because I don't think anybody wants it.
Yeah, and let's not make it 10 years. I want to meet sooner. I really enjoyed this episode. I think this was a great episode, and we can do a follow-up in the future.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a lot more to discuss, but we don't want to make it a 3-hour episode. Nobody will watch it. But thank you so much for joining today, guys. I think this has been a very fruitful conversation. Let's do our best to get this snowball effect in motion.
Yep,
Thank you, everyone.
perfect sense.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.